Committee on Community and Economic Development, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, will meet in person on Wednesday, April 30th, 2025 at 6:00 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the 2024 Haunted Happenings Report. This report be held in City Council Chambers, 93 Washington Street, Salem, Mass. 2nd floor. Joining us, we have several members of city staff. From the committee, we have Councilor Davis, Councilor Jerslow, Councilor Morcillo, and myself. I am not the chair. Councilor Watson-Felt will be here in just a few minutes. There's some scheduling conflicts. From the Committee of the Whole, we have Councilor Merkel, Councilor Cohen, Councilor Harvey, and then in Zoom, yeah. And that's it. So I will take a motion to take a recess until 6:15, and then we'll come back and have the presentation at 6:15. Councilor Morcillo.
I will move to adjourn for 15 minutes.
Councilor Morcillo moves to move into recess for 15 minutes, seconded by Councilor Jerslow.
Yes, second.
Seconded by Councilor Jerslow. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience this evening. I do have that. This one? Okay. Thank you. And an advanced request for patience as this is my first committee meeting as chair. So appreciate everyone being here this evening. I believe Councillor Hapworth read off all of the legal language in advance of our recess, so we're just going to kick it off and get started. So with that, Jeremy, would you mind coming, or wherever you'd like to present from? Do you have a microphone over there?
So we got a PowerPoint, and I'll kind of go through the PowerPoint, but the mayor will kick it off, and then we're going to have different departments come through.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
You actually just reminded me. I did want to set the housekeeping for the session tonight. We're going to have a presentation, just like in past years. And in case anyone is this is your first year, just as a heads up, this is how this works. So this is a report to the council from the department heads and local stakeholder partners around our haunted happenings experience from last year. So this is the 2024 data review. The council will accept and receive this and file this report, and there is usually no immediate further action for the council. We will take public comment after the presentation and after council discussion. Thank you. Mayor, take it away.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Good evening, everyone. So as Councillor Watson-Felt said, we're going to be sharing an update on last October in the haunted happening season. This information is largely similar to what was filed with the council in February in that report. And while we're a number of months away from October 2024 at this point, there's a spider on your microphone. I want to emphasize that this is also not the first time that we've done any kind of after-action review or debrief from October. We do have an internal working group that meets on a monthly basis to talk about October, starting the first week of November, actually. And we have external partners that we meet with as well on a monthly basis. So this is a continuation of work that's already gone in since last October as we think about getting ready for next October. Before I get into the presentation, I just want to mention a few points. The first is that haunted happenings in October in Salem is from the city's perspective, that's capital C city, meaning the city government's perspective, a public safety operation first and foremost above everything else. So the majority of our resources as a city and our time are directed towards making sure that everyone can be kept as safe as possible during the busy season. Our public safety plan for October evolves every year. It changes constantly, and following the attacks in New Orleans and the tragedy in Vancouver, this year is certainly no different. So I think you'll see in the coming October more emphasis around safety in response to concerns related to that. The second goal is related to our financial aspects of October, and that's where I'm going to kind of start the slide presentation in a moment. We want to make sure that we are appropriately balancing the costs with the revenues that come in directly to the city to avoid having to put costs onto the property taxpayers to pay for things like our portable restrooms, the police and DPW overtime, and all those other costs. We believe basically that the costs for managing the visitor economy in Salem should be borne by the visitors. And lastly, I want to just emphasize that the visitor economy does play a very important role in our economy overall here in Salem. It employs over 1,200 of our neighbors. Those individuals have over $37 million in local pay that gets reinvested and spent in our community. It provides indirect revenues to the city that help fund our local services that we rely on here. It's why we enjoy a roughly 97-98% downtown storefront occupancy rate. It keeps in business the shops and restaurants that we all get to enjoy year-round as residents here. And it gives us a vibrant, active, walkable downtown that a lot of other cities, I think, would love to have. Most importantly, it lets us share our stories and our history with millions of visitors from around the world every year. Really, it is what makes Salem very uniquely Salem. Doesn't mean that there aren't impacts, but it's something that I think does play an important role in our local economy. So I'm grateful to the city staff that are all here, the community partners. They've all had a role in getting us through the successful October season last year. It doesn't happen without a team effort, and there's too many of them here to recognize. Several of them will be speaking to you this evening, but they're all available to answer your questions as well. And with that, I will move into the first presentation. So the financial update, it's very small on that screen up there, but hopefully you can follow along in your packets. This is typically provided by our finance director. She is not able to be with us this evening, so I volunteered to take this portion of the presentation on, and I will do my best to answer questions related to the finances, but as always, you can feel free to reach out to, I can just grab this one, thanks. To reach out to Anna if you do have questions about anything that's in this presentation that I'm not able to speak to this evening. So this first slide is showing, this is the same exact information that was presented in that February report that was filed with the council, the direct expenses and revenues for the city government related to October operations, comparing this October from 2024 to the previous October of 2023. The direct costs for October activities this year came to just over $643,000 in costs, which was about 2.5% less than the costs incurred last October. And one of the leading drivers for that reduction was that we rebid the portable toilets contract. It didn't reduce the quantity of those facilities or the time frame in which they were deployed, but by rebidding that contract, we did get a more competitive price, and so that price did come down this year. On the revenue side, direct income from October 2024 was just over $716,000, which is a 3.7% reduction over the revenues collected from the previous year. Most of our revenue sources saw some small measure of decline from the previous October. So overall, the net of direct revenues for this October past was $72,622, which is down about 14% from the previous year's net, which was just over $84,000. Do the next slide. So this chart, you may recognize it from previous October updates, shows the trajectory of direct costs and revenues for each October from fiscal year 08. And you can see that generally, with the exception of the pandemic years, revenues and costs largely tracked, particularly in these last few years. You can see we've done a pretty consistent job of keeping our revenues slightly above where our expenses are coming in. Next slide, please. But despite that, you can see that over time, that net is declining. So as that margin shrinks, as these costs, especially costs related to our biggest cost drivers for October, which are public works and public safety overtime expenses, are growing at a faster pace than revenues, even though revenues are growing. Generally, you can go back, I'm not quite there yet. And one of the things I wanted to emphasize here is, as we think about this coming October with our newly settled contracts with police and fire and AFSCME, that those overtime costs are going to be going up considerably. And so we're anticipating, especially as we're looking to probably put in place additional public safety measures that I mentioned at the start, that we are going to be in a position where in this coming October, expenses could be considerable, and we want to be cognizant of that. One more slide. And that's where the meals and room excise comes in. One of the reasons this presentation doesn't take place until after January is meals and lodging excise are reported by the state to the city on a quarterly basis, so we don't have the numbers for the October quarter until January. And so what this chart is showing here is that quarter, October, November, December, for the fiscal year past, where for that quarter in FY24, it was about a little over $1.4 million. In FY25, which is this past October, was up by about $330,000, an increase of about 23%. And the largest driver of that increase was in lodging excise. The meals excise was pretty much flat from year to year. And the growth in lodging excise, which you can see on that bottom chart, that's the total combined excise going back to FY20. I'm not looking at the chart myself, but going to FY19, which was October of 2018. And you can see the impact of the pandemic year with the decline in excise generally, but you'll see that top section of the chart, that is the lodging excise share of the meals and lodging excise, and that did grow substantially over the last several years. And the reason for that is because of the addition of additional hotel rooms in the community, as well as the extension of the lodging excise to short-term rentals under some changes in state law that have happened over the last few years. So We are being mindful of the fact that, as I mentioned, we're anticipating additional costs related to some of the public safety and public works personnel expenses and non-personnel expenses for October next year. On top of that, we're anticipating the probability that if there is an economic slowdown, we'll see a decline in travel and tourism, most likely a decline in international travel as well. So when you balance those two things out, a decline in travel means fewer hotel or room lodging excises and fewer meal excises, generally coupled with a larger expenses related to the public safety costs we anticipate incurring, and we get concerned about that margin between the direct costs and the direct expenses, and that's where we need to rely on additional support from these excises to kind of balance out those costs and ensure the lodging excise is 100% paid by tourists. And if we utilize that to fill gaps that we may experience, we don't have to ask the property taxpayers to pay for that public works overtime or that police overtime. It's being directly borne by the tourists who are here in a different manner than our direct revenues, but in a manner that is still consistent with that philosophy of not wanting the property taxpayers to have to pay for the tourism impacts. So that kind of concludes the financial presentation. I don't know if you want to just have us go through the whole presentation or do, okay. All right, so I will turn it over to, I think, Ashley from Destination Salem to talk a little bit about our visitor numbers.
You can go to the next slide. Hi, everybody. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Ashley Judge. I'm the new Executive Director of Destination Salem. Destination Salem, sorry, not close enough. Oh, wow, that works. Destination Salem promotes Salem as a year-round destination, highlighting the city's vibrant history, culture, and community in every season. While our marketing spans the full calendar, our approach shifts in October during Haunted Happenings, when we focus on influencing visitor behavior to help ensure a safe, fun, and memorable experience. Onto visitation, Salem had record-breaking visitor numbers in 2024. Visitors represent the number of unique individuals coming to a location, while visits count how many times those individuals return. One visitor can make multiple visits during any given time frame. So you can see over the course of 2024, the city saw a total of 1,040,600 visitors, marking an 8.6% rise from the previous year. We also set a new visitation record on Halloween, welcoming over 87,000 visitors on October 31st, an increase of nearly 37% compared to the visitors the same year last year. That's visitation. Destination Salem's October marketing strategy for 2024, including maintaining both salem.org and hauntedhappenings.org. Combining these websites reached over 1.8 million page views in October. Haunted Happenings saw a 7% traffic increase year over year, welcoming 275,000 users in October alone. We kept these websites updated with essential details on Salem businesses, bathrooms, parking, travel tips, and Halloween night logistics. Plus, we marketed more than 100 events around town. The Salem app had 36,000 users and generated nearly 200,000 sessions as well. On the social media side, we created 200 plus original posts, which allowed us to reach 320,000 Instagram accounts, 1.3 million Facebook users, with key messaging focused on public transportation and keeping Salem magical. We also tapped into our email list, which is 100,000 plus opt-in subscribers, which allowed us to highlight events, travel tips, more information about public transportation and keeping Salem magical, and focusing on Salem businesses. Press releases were distributed throughout October to provide festival and special event support, and as such, we did have a lot of great media coverage. National Geographic, Times of London, Boston Globe I'm going on too long, but it's a long list. We also gave out lots of guides. We gave out 150,000 guides here in Salem and across our distribution network, including direct mail, AAA offices, visitor centers, Logan Airport, Faneuil Hall, and over at our visitor center on Derby Street, we had just over 16,000 guests stop by in October seeking personal recommendations. So altogether, our October efforts supported record-breaking visitation by keeping people informed, inspired, and connected, whether they were planning a trip, wandering the streets, or sharing the magic of Salem from afar. Thank you.
Hello, I am Christina Hodge. I've met most of you counselors, and I am the Assistant Transportation Director here in the Department of Transportation in Salem. So tonight I'm going to go through some of the transportation aspects of haunted happenings. So as you're likely aware, our department handles the year-round resident permits as well as the October-only permits. So this year we issued 2,829 October resident permits and 745 visitor permits. The map on this slide shows streets which are year-round resident permits, which are shown in purple, and streets that are designated for resident only within the month of October, which are shown in green. In total, there were fewer year-round and October-only permits processed in 2024 compared to 2023, but the most notable impact was the reduced number of walk-ins to both the annex and the parking office located at 1 New Liberty Street. In 2023, we saw 1,278 walk-ins, and in 2024, there were 618 walk-ins. So just to note, this does not include anyone who called by phone to ask questions. We did receive a number of questions over the phone because we switched to a new online-based system with license plate technology. So this year there were a lot of questions about whether or not folks received their hang tags yet, if they were lost in the mail, when they would be receiving them, and we worked together with the parking office to tackle all of those voicemails and calls that came in. We also rely on DPS to help us hang temporary signage for the October-only streets. This year, DPS placed approximately 1,300 signs on 86 streets, and the estimated staff time for this effort is about 120 hours. Next slide, please. So there was a decrease in the total resident parking tickets in 2024 with a total of 1,666 compared to 2,225 the prior year. This includes both October and year-round resident streets. The total number of tickets issued that were non-resident parking specific increased slightly from 3,218 in 2023 to 3,318 in 2024. And the last table on this slide shows the breakdown of tickets that were issued to vehicles with Massachusetts license plates and the ones that were issued to out-of-state license plates. This table shows the number of vehicles that were towed in 2024 compared to the previous years. Just wanted to note for this year, there were 5 instances of residents being towed because the license plate information was entered incorrectly, and this was either done by a user error on the resident side or enforcement issue, but all 5 of these issues were resolved. So this slide is a lot to take in. I'll just say that first and foremost. So the table on the left ranks the highest year-round parking violations by street. The violations are then broken down into tickets and tows. And then the map on the right side of the page shows both the year-round and October-only streets, both in purple and green, as the previous slide showed. And then the density of the citations overlaid in the approximate areas. So for this slide, we're focusing on the purple streets for the year-round resident permit parking. The marks on the map are again approximate. We can only rely on the information that is input to the tickets by enforcement to determine the exact street locations. So then this slide switches to the green October-only streets. And as you can see, there's a little bit of ambiguity when it comes to the exact locations for these violations. For example, you'll see Washington Square is the top listed street. It does not designate whether it is north, south, east, west. So it's safe to say it's around the common, but where specifically on Washington Square it is a little up in the air. Again, this year we ran the satellite parking lot shuttle program for October weekends, Indigenous Peoples Day, and Halloween Day. There are two maps shown because for Halloween Day only, we had slightly different service. The Salem Hospital lot at 108 Jefferson Avenue was unavailable to be used on Halloween Day since it was a weekday and they rely on that lot for their employees at the hospital. And then the Salem High School lot, the hours were a little bit different than the O'Keefe lot. They started at 2 p.m. because the high school had a shortened school day. So just to keep everything clear as possible, we broke this out into two different maps to post on our website and then in coordination with Destination Salem to really help get the word out to the folks that were visiting on Halloween Day or on Halloween weekends and Indigenous Peoples Day. So for our shuttle program, for all the days where the service ran, there was a total of 21, oh my God, the spider's back. Whew. I had forgotten he was in here. Back to the presentation. On all of the days where the shuttle service ran, there was a total of 21,425 shuttle users, and we asked the service providers to use counters as folks board the shuttle, so that is how that is documented. And the weekend ridership was fairly consistent throughout the month, as you can see with the breakdown of the different weekends below, with Indigenous Peoples Day being a little bit higher with the added day there, and then Halloween Day being a little on the low side just based on the shorter service hours we provided on that day. During October, the MBTA offered additional weekend service to and from Salem. On Halloween Day, there were trains approximately every 30 minutes. The MBTA data showed that October weekends had a total of 173,804 passengers boarding to or from Salem. This was an increase of approximately 58% over 2023, which saw approximately 110,000 passengers. And in general, October ridership was up about 25% for the month compared to 2023. The ferry also saw an increase in ridership with approximately 84,000 passengers utilizing their service. The ferry's operations are heavily dependent on weather, so this has the biggest impact on their season-to-season ridership. The larger vessels, which hold more passengers, may be used in October, but again, this depends on the changing weather patterns. And I will pass it off to Chief Miller.
I'm scared of spiders. Good evening. I'm going to go over a little bit about what we spent in the police department specific to public safety around Halloween, some of the statistics related to that, personnel, some more enforcement activity, and then I'll touch a little bit on future plans. Can you come back one slide? If you look up, that slide to the left is of the command center at the police station. I've talked in the past about the way we handle the very busy days in October when we in effect create a second police department, and to cover the downtown area. That way the rest of Salem still gets adequate police service, and we don't spend all our resources where the majority of the crowds are. But we're fully capable of running a police department from that second unit, and that's run out of the conference center in the police department. It also houses the command staff from visiting units, NEMLEC personnel, state police personnel, federal agents who assist us in the public safety mission. And along those lines, we depend heavily not just on Salem police officers, but NEMLEC, our sort of regional task force, our neighboring police departments, the Essex County Sheriff's Office, federal partners including the FBI, the ATF, and the Federal Park Service, National Park Service, and of course the Massachusetts State Police. Total calls for service in October were pretty flat. They were down 67 calls, or about 1.5%. Total calls for 2024 over 2023 were also flat. So while I think visitorship, clearly visitors are up, but the calls for service are pretty consistent. You can see those bars on the graph are, there's a lot of bar off to the left, so you're just seeing the very differences. Really, we're talking about, as I said, a 67 call difference from last year. Next slide. These are calls for service specifically on October 31st, and again, you can see that these are really statistically identical. One more. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Resident sticker parking enforcement. We changed this year, as Ms. Hodge mentioned, to a computerized model. But we feel that the decline in enforcement, this is, by the way, this is just police department enforcement, not transportation division. We feel that the drop in enforcement was because there was a drop in violations. Certainly, anecdotally, officers observed simply fewer cars jammed into those residential streets. I think in previous years I described tow trucks, towing an out-of-town car out of a residential parking space and another car pulling into that spot while the tow truck was still visible. That really, we did not see that this year. So I think those statistics about increased public transportation, shuttle service, and less traffic really are bearing fruit in that regard. Those parking tickets are largely issued by the state police. They assist us on those very busy nights in Salem. I mean, I'll get into a little bit more, but one of the nice things about utilizing the state police for this is they don't charge us, so they are a free service. Is that tows? Okay, so tows are a little bit more limited to what the tow trucks can accomplish in the traffic, right? It's not so much the number of violations as just how time-consuming it is to tow a car, and that there's a finite number of tow trucks and a infinite amount of traffic. Again, the towing declined by about 19% from 2023 to 2024, and again, I think that reflects a decline in violations. So I mentioned the number of personnel that we bring in to assist Salem police officers. This shows the total number of officers on duty on any one of those critical evenings. That is the weekend nights leading up to the 31st, and then the weekend after the 31st. It doesn't quite work to compare these numbers to last year on individual days because the days don't line up, so to speak. But I put in those two green bars you see are from 2023 on the ultimate Saturday, the Saturday before Halloween and Halloween itself, and you can see that we had an approximately 7% increase in personnel deployment over the previous year. The exact cost of those out-of-town police officers is difficult to calculate because a lot of the police departments, particularly ones associated with NEMLEC, don't actually charge us. They view the mutual aid that they're rendering to Salem as a cost of their own operations, and this is. We don't reciprocate in that there aren't any other events like Halloween, but we do reciprocate where mutual aid is called. For instance, if our dive team goes to Beverly to attempt a rescue, we don't bill the Beverly Police Department for that. But some departments do, and it tends to go based on the number of personnel that they have. Obviously, a much smaller police department can't afford to send as police officers for free. But as I mentioned, state police, huge asset, and one that we intend to use to greater advantage in coming years. It's not, I'll be honest, I'm a little uncomfortable with troopers patrolling Salem. That's our job. But where they can perform some of the other duties, like the resident parking sticker enforcement. They have an excellent anti-drone unit that we use, counterterrorism plainclothes officers, a number of those bomb squad, a number of those sort of specialty units that really can't be found elsewhere. Having mentioned that, here are our actual labor costs over the last 4 years. If you, and this represents we paid 40% less for those outside officers, even though we employed more of them. And that, again, falls to that explanation I just gave you. Salem Police overtime was up about 7%. Now, part of that is due to increased labor costs, but we did, in fact, have more police officers working. Miscellaneous expenses up 8%, and this all combined to increase our overall haunted happenings expenses approximately 2%. As the mayor mentioned, based on the events in New Orleans, Vancouver, Germany, and others, I anticipate some of these costs going up next year. I do intend to use our partners, both federal and state, to try to increase the overall coverage of Salem, but there is no substitute for Salem police officers patrolling Salem. And so while I will also use NEMLEC and I will use our neighboring police departments, having as many Salem police officers on the street as we can field, I think is the right move, both for good police service and sensitivity, right? There's an unfortunate expression called an away game, when as a police officer you travel to another city, and the fewer away games we have, the better we are, even if we do have to rely on those outside officers. The nature of those greater costs and the greater measures I intend to employ this year will be kind of across the board, but one of the most important ones, one of those lessons that we learned from New Orleans, is that we need to secure those frozen areas better. We need to, those areas that we designate as car-free, you are safe to walk in the street here, really need to be better protected. There will be other areas. It's not possible to protect every pedestrian in Salem, every person who comes here to celebrate Halloween, but those areas where we're implying that you're safe, I believe we need to make harder, so to speak. Thank you. Turn it over to my colleague, Fire Chief Valentine.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to just describe a few things that we do here. Is there another spider? I'm not afraid of spiders. Snakes, that's another thing. So the Salem Fire Department, we're less forward-facing in our mission than the police. They need a robust show of force. I would describe it better if I knew how, but that's kind of what their mission I see is. Ours is basically twofold as it comes to emergency services. We're overseeing the ambulance company in Salem. We oversee the EMS Atlantic providers, and we also actively participate in providing EMS here in Salem. And that mission is not anything we don't take seriously, and we do not consider less important during the haunted happenings. Our troops are out on those carts that you've seen. We put 2 of them out beginning Thursday nights every weekend in October, excuse me, and even so in September if we start to see larger crowds on the Saturdays and Sundays, in particular when we have the food truck festivals and other stuff like that. The mission of the medical carts is twofold. One of them is equipped to respond rapidly to a fire. It has 75 gallons on the back of the little UTV we use, and our second cart will be equipping that in the same manner this year. I feel like that is just vital if you have a small fire. With the crowds and the modern notification systems, the chances of a fire getting a good jump on us are low, but getting to the fire could be delayed due to these crowds. So these little carts, you can do a lot of good with 75 gallons and 2 well-trained firefighters when they can get through the crowds on these carts. So that's the change I'm doing this year. Both carts will still be able to transport patients, but generally we don't do that with the carts. We just get to the scene and begin care. As I was speaking to some of the councilors, we have the best equipment available. We have the Lucas CPR, we have AEDs, and we have all the medical experience needed to provide the care that an ambulance would provide, but we're doing it and we're getting there much faster. And that's, I see as our primary mission, taking care of the crowds. Firefighting is still not second to none. We're still capable of responding to every inch of this city. Although the city may be locked down hard in certain areas, our department knows the access points to get fire trucks through. And if we need to get the people in the crowds to move, we have the noisemakers that will hopefully do that. It's just ideal, though, that we have a plan in place. This is the same plan that we've been using for almost 5, this will be our 5th year, I should say it that way. It hasn't changed much, but we have increased the size of it. We've expanded it to include more hours covered by the medical carts, additional personnel on duty. Last year, we saw a 21% increase on personnel hired during the month of October. I just increased the amount of medical cart time that they were out there working. I just saw that it was needed. Sometimes on Thursday afternoon, the city was gridlocked, and we needed to put them out there. So those were the decisions we made. In addition, I make sure that our second ladder is in service for the entire month, and also our downtown companies, there would be an extra firefighter so that when we do have events, if trucks are delayed, the trucks that do get there have the additional manpower. And that's kind of a formula that I've been using, and it seems to be a good one. The year before last, I expanded to mutual aid, as Chief Miller mentioned. We rely heavily on mutual aid now, and what that is used for here is, if we were to get something, I'm going to use the Bridge Street neighborhood for an example, it might be difficult for some of our engines to cross Salem to get to the Bridge Street neighborhood. So I've instituted a plan with my abutters, all our abutters, PBD, Marblehead, Swampscott, Danvers, any of those neighborhoods you can describe, Beverly, that if in the instance of a phone alarm, they will send 2 pumps and a ladder to that alarm along with our response. So even if we have trouble crossing the city, Beverly will already be in Bridge Street with 2 pumps and a ladder. So we have a pre-plan for the instance that might come upon us in the regular neighborhoods, and we have a plan for the downtown with more manning on the trucks and the quick response vehicles. So that's, as I see, our primary role with the medical and enhanced fire protection. Lastly, as Chief Miller mentioned, also the emergency management, it comes under the fire department, and we work hand in hand with the police department and the DPW in locating equipment to go ahead and block these streets. We have some stuff at NEMLAC that's available to us. We have other equipment that's available that we've purchased, and there's a lot of discussion that we will be increasing the purchase of more barricades and stuff. So when we do lock down the city, it will be impenetrable to our best ability. And that is a role that we fill through the Emergency Management Division. So we did see an increase in calls for the medical carts. The medical carts saw almost a 41% increase in the amount of calls they were sent to, 156 this year, and the idea of those is every time a medical cart responds to something, we don't have to roll an engine. And that engine does not have to battle through the streets of Salem, as you know, and then find its way back to station. The carts handle the call entirely. So they're worth every penny, and that's where we put the bang and the money for the biggest bang for the buck. And I think we're well suited to do it again this year, almost in the same fashion. It may be expanded a little bit more depending on the crowds. There were more people last year, in particular on Halloween. So, and that's all I have. Who's after me? Jeremy. Thank you, everybody.
Sorry, Chief, before you go, could you just let the public know what NEMLAC stands for?
Oh, God.
Or the other chief, either one of you.
Northeast Emergency Management. Help me out.
Northeast Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council, NEMLAC.
Northeast Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council.
Separate from NERAC.
I should have said NARAC.
And you should have said NARAC.
Yes, yeah.
Which is another council of regional
MEMA.
responders.
Yeah, they're under MEMA. So my misspoke. Thank you.
Okay, I inferred that's what that was, but for the public's reference, it's always good to know. Thank you, Chief.
Hello. For those who don't know me, I'm Jeremy Fisk. I'm the Special Events Manager for the City of Salem. I survived my first haunted happenings, still here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the resident survey that we do every year and some of the key points. One of them that we heard quite a bit about is the notifications on road closures were ranked a lot higher this year than 2023. A lot of that has to do with the My Salem app that will send direct road closures to people's cell phones. In terms of the traffic and the sort of the road closures in general, people were pretty torn between 2024 and 2023. 42% said it was worse, 24% said it was better, and then 34% said the same. One of the new things we did implement this year was the amplification ban, and there 68% of residents had somewhat positive to positive view on this ban. More residents ventured downtown in 2024 compared to 2023. Keep in mind, 24% of the residents that took the survey live downtown. And overall, the residents' impression of haunted happenings was slightly more favorable this year over last year. Let me go to the next one. These two graphs, the left is just our general city management during haunted happenings, which was mostly very good, good, or fair. And our right side was the events we hold, basically starting in September, and most of those were overall positive on both the management of the downtown and the type of events featured throughout haunted happenings. One thing I did want to bring up this year, we asked in the resident survey about switching from fireworks to end Halloween to a drone show over the North River, and 52% of residents are in favor of switching to the drone show, while 22% are against it. Based on the fact that the condo over on that side of the river now is going to be occupied in Halloween, we're probably not going to be able to do fireworks, so I think it's going to be a drone show this year. So those are some of the key things from the resident survey, and then Ashley can go over just a quick couple things for the business survey.
Sorry, Jeremy, quickly, did you say how many responses to the resident survey you received?
Yeah, I did not say, but I can tell you if I can get. It was 700 and I want to say 724 or something like that, which was about 200 down from last year.
Thank you.
Hello, I am still Ashley. To better understand the impact of haunted happenings on local businesses, we distributed a feedback survey with the help of the Salem Chamber, Salem Main Streets, and Creative Collective. They helped us spread the word. We had 45 local business owners respond. We had a strong overall business satisfaction with haunted happenings. Nearly 3/4, 73% of respondents rated haunted happenings as good or very good, showcasing business satisfaction. All ratings trended in a positive direction from the previous year. Very good ratings rose 21.1% over 2023. Fair ratings saw a decrease of about 20%, and very poor ratings dropped off the survey entirely. We didn't drop them off, they did not elect that option, with 0 businesses reporting their experience as very poor. So overall, the 2024 survey results showed an upward trend in business satisfaction.
And that wraps up the presentation part of it.
Thank you. First, just a heartfelt thank you to all of you for being here tonight and for presenting pulling together the data, taking the time to be here and answer the questions that I'm sure the council's going to have. We really appreciate it every year. This is a really important conversation. It's a really important opportunity for the council to understand the impact to both our residents as we understand it from their perspective, but also the city, all of the department heads. So thank you for taking the time. With that, I'm going to start by opening it up to the members of the CED for questions. Councilor Marcello.
Ashley, let's start with you. I'm looking at the business survey, and I'm wondering if you, this year or next year, did you drill down on any of the answers? So specifically, if a business owner said that they weren't happy with the cleanup, like a very poor job with the cleanup, which, by the way, cleanup was amazing, as usual, again this year, it really was great. So it feels to me like in a lot of these different categories, there's something specific that they have in mind. And so did we drill down and find out what the specific concern was?
Thank you for asking. I am glad it corresponds with the additional materials I brought. Yeah, we looked at the patterns amongst the people who were less happy. Over half of respondents, 23 out of 45, did mention parking as a challenge. So things like lack of parking for PM shifts, parking and traffic caused stress for visitors who didn't plan ahead. 37% of respondents highlighted crowds or overcrowding and long lines. You know, these are other quotes, like the question of the season was, where do we go to escape the crowds? Even with tickets, people were overwhelmed by the sheer number of visitation. Restrooms came up as folks who clean those restrooms. We promise we're doing our part. But a third of the respondents noted inadequate restrooms as their concern. Staffing was about 20% of those that were less than happy, mentioning staffing shortages or burnout as a key issue. About 17% of them talked about street performers. And then the last kind of pattern that jumped out was about 11% talked about competition and non-local vendors or competition affecting local businesses. So those were like the major patterns that jumped out from those that were not as happy.
So I guess what I'm looking for is, as it relates to the city, like competition I can't do anything with, right? There are long lines, I can't do anything with that either. But I can look at this and say, you rated the cleanup effort very poorly, right? Like there was some amount of people that did that. So what specifically, was there a section, was there a street, was there a corner, was it in front of their business? Like what, can we drill down next time to find out what the specific concern was there? Again, with public safety, those are pretty good, but again, if they rated it as poor, what was the public safety issue that they had that they were noting when they filled this out? What was their grievance there? Yeah. So I guess as it relates to what we can fix as a city, as opposed to what the business market is like out there. I guess that's what I would look for next year.
Sure.
Specifically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Chief Miller, you didn't mention any arrests this year or how it compared to previous years.
So this year we made 3 criminal arrests and 3 protective custodies, which is consistent with previous years. I mean, those numbers change by 1, 2, 3, and 4 numbers, but really, I mean, the first year I was here, which was 2021, I think we had 15, but even that's within a statistical ballpark.
Was this on Halloween or was this spread?
I'm sorry, that's the night of Halloween.
The night of Halloween, okay. Do you keep any sort of numbers for the big nights like weekends, I guess, in October?
You know, I don't remember any arrests on those in the downtown area on those big weekend nights. Am I? Yeah, I think I'm going to say no. We didn't have any. It was very peaceful.
Okay, great. And then Chief Dion, the medical calls, do you have any sort of breakdown about what the calls were about? Like what is happening out there with the increased, are there increased calls or is it just that it's increased for that one, those?
I think the increase in the calls could be because the crowds have increased, in particular on the Saturdays. Most of our busiest days are those particular Saturdays and then Halloween and the weekend, the 4 days leading up to Halloween. The nature of the calls, I'll be honest with you, it's mostly trips and falls. And we have had some critical calls, and there's been some CPR done and those types of calls too. There's been some accidents, but mostly just trips and falls. A couple exhaustion calls. A few of the days were hot, and so we got a lot of calls on those warm days. But nothing, there's no trend, there's nothing really critical, and thankfully, you know, but some people just take an ill turn when they're here, and we're here to provide the care they need, and then some of them are just clumsy, like me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was curious about,
Yeah.
whether they were trip and falls.
Absolutely, trips and falls.
Or,
yeah, we had 2 different days that the dehydration was an issue. In some of them were for employees of restaurants and stuff. They're just killing it, working incredibly hard. You know, and there is burnout. We all experience it in our staffs and so forth. And it wears the crews down, including the city crews, the DPW, the police officers. You know, everybody's grinding away, and so that's it though. There's no real pattern. There's nothing that jumps out.
Okay, perfect. The last one is Christina. Sorry, I'll be gentle. The decrease in the shuttle bus costs. Just curious about that because it seemed like it was the same number of weekends, I think, as last year, but it seemed like we were spending less on the shuttle bus.
I don't have, I know that for at least, we also run the Universal Steel lots, and I know we lost, I think, another day in October, because last year we ran the weekend that kind of bridged into October, I believe. I think it was like the end of September, and October 1st was a Sunday, so we did run that weekend. But I would have to double check that for the actual number of days.
And did you have any numbers on this year's, the number of people that used the shuttle service this year as opposed to previous years?
Off the top of my head, I want to say that last year was around 18,000, but we did not have a solid count for Halloween Day, so that was approximate.
Okay.
But in the grand scheme, it's relatively stable. It's also weather dependent, and
Sure.
a lot of folks, if it's raining, you know, if we get great weather, people are more likely to want to park further away and take the shuttle. But if it's raining, you know.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Mayor, do you have any information on that, the shuttle decrease?
I can certainly look it up and get back to you.
I mean, that's fine. I'm just curious if anyone knows. It was like $10,000.
I don't offhand. It might be related to the number of days that the shuttle was running. The ridership was up I think it was, the numbers compared to last year were in the letter that were filed in February, so I would refer you to that. But we can get back to you on as far as...
We're not decreasing the number of shuttles that are on the road necessarily.
No, not at all.
When they're
yeah.
running, okay.
Yeah, and I just to add to that, there are also a fair number of people who use the free parking in the satellite lots but don't ride the shuttle. So those are cars that are going to those lots and then walking, especially from the hospital lot, which is a walkable distance to downtown.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Hapworth.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it wouldn't be a Haunted Happenings meeting if we didn't talk about the Common for a little bit here. I think maybe Jeremy or maybe the mayor, there are seemingly two different uses on the Common during October for Haunted Happenings. One of them is run by a local group, features a lot of local artists, I think is generally well-liked by members of the community, and has very little impact on the Common. So that's the marketplace that happens through the center of the Common. That, you walk out there today, you don't see any impacts from that on those spaces. The grass looks great. My kids play soccer out there. I think that is generally considered a good use and a good way to move crowds around and feature some of the best of Salem and some great marketplaces. The other is run by an out-of-town company on the western edge of the Common, which is now a Dust Bowl. We talk about this each year, but why can't we move those food trucks off the Common? It makes a section of the Common unusable, muddy. It's, ice gathers there in the wintertime. It's just, it's for residents who live there year round, it's essentially an unusable portion of the Common, and it's damaging the trees. About 50% of downtown Salem is surface parking, and I just have a hard time buying the argument that we can't move some of those food trucks to other spaces.
Councillor, point of clarification. Do you mean the Food Truck Festival or the Fiesta Food Truck?
Sorry, not the Food Truck Festival.
Thank you.
Which generally is actually not a problem if it's not tearing down the fence. But generally not a problem on the Food Truck Festival. It's the Fiesta trucks that park for
in
the
the
majority.
apron. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, so since I started last year, one of the things that I really wanted to do was get Fiesta, get Creative Collective together to try to utilize the space on the Common a little better, and that's one of the reasons you saw that the rides moved this year, which I think was, worked well for the space. And we have been meeting about trying to figure out a better way to do those food trucks on the Common. We utilize the outside, the Washington Square outside of the Common for a lot of the vendor market flow, especially coming in, and then the staff that needs to park somewhere. So putting them right out there wouldn't be, I don't know if there'd be enough room, but we are in discussions about trying to figure out a better flow.
So I guess I'm just talking about just the food, like the fried Oreo food truck, those like, I don't know, 5 or 6 food trucks, whatever it is there that Fiesta brings in and parks there for the entire year. Why can't those go somewhere else? Like you could take a third of the Church Street parking lot, you might lose 30 or 40 parking spaces, which in the grand scheme of things, I don't know if that's impactful. Or any number of spots. There's other places I think that a food truck could go. I guess my question is, why does it have to be there? Why couldn't the Salem Common be for the Creative Collective Marketplace and for the Kitty Carnival and some of the rotating events that come through there? And then the more permanent one, why can't that go into a surface level parking lot?
I mean, I don't want to speak for Creative Collective or the vendor markets, but I think it works well with those two together, and how many people go to the Common and the volume there in comparison if we put it at a lot or put it outside, and keeping in mind that a big chunk of our revenue does come from the percentage we get from Fiesta and Creative Collective. And like I said, we are working together to try to figure out maybe a better flow on the Common for those things for this year.
Thank you. I think that I think we do the same thing year after year, and I think we can all see the impact that it has, and I think that there's a few weekends out of the year that we need it, but then the city of Salem needs it for the rest of the year. So I think if it's going to cause this permanent damage, going to destroy trees and cause grass not to grow in that spot. I think we should continue to look for other spaces to use that. Another question for either the mayor or maybe Jeremy also. We talk about the economic impacts of haunted happenings and the fact that this is becoming the breakdown is becoming more and more difficult for the city in terms of what we're spending on and what we're bringing in. Sort of an age-old question that we talk about is sponsorships, or in some way monetizing what is now an internationally recognized thing that happens here in Salem once a year, haunted happenings. Have there been explorations into haunted happenings sponsored by Pepsi? Like there is international recognition of what happens here, and I feel like we could do a better job, or we could monetize that in different ways.
Thanks, Councilor. So first I'll say, we are constantly looking for ways to generate additional revenues off of the visitors to help support those costs. So there is a matter before the council now around a parking surcharge for private property that's used for public parking purposes, so we can generate some revenue off that. We are planning this October to have a small charge for the shuttle service, not for the parking in those satellite lots, but for the shuttle, so that will offset the costs for the shuttle. So that will kind of come off the table in terms of a cost center that we're concerned about. And then just constantly aligning, make sure that our fees that we charge for city services, whether it's a health department inspection or a licensing process, that those properly reflect the costs to the city for providing that service. We did, like I mentioned at the start, settle some contracts that increased personnel costs, and we want to make sure that the fees that those personnel are now providing, if they're taking in a half hour to process a permit for someone, it's going to cost more to the city than it did last year. And so that cost should be borne by the person requesting the permit, not necessarily by the taxpayers of the city. So we're looking for ways to kind of do that. The topic of sponsorships has been discussed, and Jeremy might be able to speak to it a bit more. We do want to be cognizant of not crossing a line where it seems like we're overly commercializing what happened here. I think I'm personally very sensitive to people expressing concerns about the perception that the city is profiting off of a real true tragedy that happened, and not wanting to kind of continue feeding into that belief that people might have, while also recognizing we have very real costs to manage, the very real impacts of 1 million people coming into our city, and any opportunity we have to responsibly export that onto other sources than taxpayers, I think we need to explore that. I don't know if you want to touch on this.
And just again, we are having those conversations now. I don't think they ever took place before, but they are happening now. So we'll see where it leads. Yeah.
Yeah, just one more question. Actually, two more questions for Chief Miller. We talked about the drone show replacing the fireworks, which I think will make some people happy. Is that in combination with the loudspeakers? Is that something that you feel is going to allow people to move forward? Because I think people downtown may not see that drone show, so I'm just...
That's a tentative plan. As I think you're alluding to, the audible nature of a fireworks show is kind of a nice punctuation point for the evening. So we're looking to replicate that in some way, whether it's with the loudspeakers or we discussed the possibility of cannon fire, but I think that's been dispensed with. So yes, loudspeakers.
Wisely dispensed with, I think, probably on that one. Okay, but we think potentially the loudspeakers that we heard, was it last year or the year before? I don't know what first.
Yeah, so along those lines, we have switched vendors. We feel that the new vendor product will be much more successful than the previous one.
Okay. And then finally on, we have a tour bus ordinance coming down soon, it looks like. But on the tour buses, could we commit this year that for anytime we have a hard barricade up, like a truck or something, or a Jersey barricade, that we'll have an officer or somebody stationed or a volunteer stationed on the barricade leading in? Just want to ensure that we're not
I mean,
allowing tour buses essentially to get through there.
I'm well aware of the issue you're talking about. I don't think I can commit to having an officer at every barricade, but where those critical spots are, where the tour buses are creating problems, yes, I think that is a priority.
Okay, so I think we need to allow cars through, obviously, but the tour buses are the problem that we want to solve for there. Thank you. Good.
You guys were timed exactly the same. Councillor Jerslow, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Councilor Watson-Felt. I think this would first go to Chief Dion. I did send a few emails out.
I did see that, yeah. Yeah.
We had a lot of issues last year at Charter and Central Street, and also the ones down at Derby Street. I know you were helping me with
The ones on Derby Street, Derby Wharf, we relocated those over more towards the vessel and the tourist section where they were cutting through. And I found that there was no issue after we did that. At Central Street and Charter Street, you know, the thinking behind the light towers is we try to put them in areas where when there's many people, large crowds that are going to be spilling into the streets, and their streets are still open most of those times, we need lights there. It draws attention to that specific spot, and it says to the drivers, oh, hey, yeah, okay. And you can see the crowds, all right? When the city streets are not well lit, then the people are spilling over into the streets. At Charter and Central, I looked at possibly relocating it to the Front Street lot and aiming it would still light that intersection, and it would probably be 150 feet away from where it was last year, and I think that should satisfy their needs. We made a great effort this year to make sure the lights were aiming down in a 25 to 40 degree angle in different locations. They still serve the purpose of lighting those choke spots, yet they didn't bother the residents. And also we went out of our way to make sure once the crowds dispersed, we shut them down. We paid an active attention and shut them down as early as we could.
It's not the lights, it's the generator, the noise.
Yeah, I understand that. That's why I think the one at Central and Charter, if we relocate it over to the Front Street lot, it'll still light that intersection, and I think we could achieve the effort without bothering the neighbors, as some of them said that we did last year.
And also, can they go to solar lights, some type of solar lighting? I even talked to Mary Butler from the PEM, the security, and because people were complaining at 27 Charter Street, you had one up there lighting the path that they cross over to the PEM, New Liberty Street.
Yep.
And the people at 27 Charter Street. Late at night when it's a little quieter, hearing the generator.
Yeah.
I got a lot of calls from the residents.
We did acknowledge that, and I think you and I talked about it. And those two particular lights, we made sure that we were shutting down earlier. And on some of the nights we didn't turn them on. And you know, you'll notice the ones up in Washington Street, Essex Street Mall, the Common, Hawthorne Boulevard. Those are always on. Some of the other ones are less needed when the crowds aren't spilling into the streets and the mass groups that we've seen during the weekends and the weekend nights. So yeah, we're cognizant of that, and we will adjust our schedule to try to get those particular ones shut down earlier.
Any way we can go to solar light?
I'm not sure what the products available, costs, and so forth. The towers we have, we own them, and they're all LED, and they work really well. And it's certainly meets the need. I absolutely like those intersections lit up. I mean, pedestrians are still getting hit, every year, and that's why we're working on fences on the sidewalks, barricades to keep people from walking in the streets where it's not safe to do so. In the area, Witch House comes to mind, and many other areas. And we've expanded sidewalks on some of the sections of Essex Street, and we're continuing to look at all those areas. And the light towers are still part of that effort. The primary goal here is public safety, and I know that some people are a little aggravated with it, but when we're able to, we will relocate, and which we proved that we did. We were willing to do that. Right now, I don't see us hanging more lights, city lights. I don't know what the budget for that would be, but this is the fix that we came up with about 8 to 10 years ago, and we've expanded it, and that's what we're using.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Councilor. Yep.
My next question would be to, I believe, Chief Miller. Chief, I got a lot of complaints of residents on Central Street that the closure of Charter Street, people can't get down to their, or they can't, the residents can't get into the old police station in the back of their parking lot. They felt that the road closures were too early in the day, even way before Halloween, like weeks before. Any thoughts on?
So there's a play between putting out a schedule, right, and sticking to the schedule, which a lot of people asked us for, and I think we tried to err on that side this year, or doing it dynamically the moment we decide that the danger to pedestrians is significant enough and we block off the street. I mean, I think that we can try to be more sensitive to those days when a road closure is not necessary, but we got a lot of, we get similar complaints when, nobody knows when it's going to close down because nobody knows when the pedestrians are going to get to that point. That being said, as I alluded to earlier, I think there will be more closures this year because of the overall safety and the issues, the incidents that have happened nationwide and worldwide. So where the option is to err on the side of closing a street down for the purposes of public safety, I'm going to be a little bit more prone to close those streets. That being said, when it's not a hard closure, when it's not an immovable barrier, we remain ready to assist motorists, residents getting their cars to their home. Obviously, it takes a while, and there isn't necessarily a police officer standing there, so it may be that they have to call and we dispatch an officer. But the idea is to accommodate the residents as much as possible.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
My next question would be to Christina Hodge. Just a quick question. Residents on Forrester Street, they were complaining they have the resident parking during October, but during the day, like on weekends especially, Saturdays and Sundays when they have big events on the common that are happening earlier in the day, that the time on the resident parking, they're asking for to be even earlier. Some of them are it's a different time during the day. So that's what could that be adjusted, the time?
I would have to look into that. I do know that Forrester Street came forward to the Transportation Commission with a year-round parking request, and the comments we got were a little bit split. So it has been just sitting in limbo as a requested street for some, but not for others. I know there was some pushback, and there was even comments about Airbnbs, which I would rather not dive into that for my department. But I can certainly look into the timing. So it was an issue with time of day for the October starting.
Yeah, they're saying that the events on the common are actually earlier in the day than what the time is on the parking. So they're finding that they can't find any parking. They go out in the morning shopping, they come back, and there's people parked there.
Okay.
It's a timing issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
And while I have the floor, I did look into the days that the shuttle ran in 2023 for you, Councilor Morcillo. So there were 12 days that the shuttle ran in 2023. We did have that kind of bookend weekend with the 30th and the October 1st. And there were only 10 days of service in 2024 because we lost that sort of leading weekend. Thank you.
Actually, Christina, hold on one second. Do you have one more?
Just one more question, but not for Christine.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Mr. Greenbaum, I see you over in the corner. Sorry. I know, he's trying to hide over there. I just had one quick question. The weekends before Halloween, the trash at the Witch City Mall is deplorable. Is there any way, I know it's a private business there, but the trash cans were, 5 feet over the top of the trash can. It was a deplorable walking through. the mall, seeing all that trash and people would just throw it on the ground there.
Specifically the weekend before Halloween?
Yeah.
Okay, so we work with the mall all year round, but particularly through October and the haunted happenings, we are very cognizant of the amount of trash that gets collected at the mall. So we are on top of them pretty much all the time. When my staff is out, I send them through the mall, in the morning and the afternoon so that we're on top of it. If there's a problem, we reach out to the mall right away to get somebody over there to try and clean that up. It may take a little bit of time, but we do try to get on top of it right away. So we will keep that in mind, and but we are trying to be on top of it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
That's it. Thank you.
Councilor Davis, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if there's a better question for the mayor or for Ms. Hodge, but the 53% increase in ridership on the MBTA is fantastic. I was just curious what kind of goes into that, the extended service from the MBTA. Is that just advocacy on the part of the city? Is there a formula? And now that we've demonstrated that a lot of we've gotten a lot of ridership with the extended service. Can we expect even more service? How does that kind of work?
Yeah, so we start organizing meetings with Keolis months in advance to kind of go over the busy days, the busy weekends, what we have going on, what events we have. So they prepare for it. They add trains as needed. So they've been great to work with, at least the 1 year I've done it, and we'll continue to do that. But really it's about meeting with them ahead of time. So I start organizing meetings 3 months ahead, and they're weekly Friday meetings. So,
Jeremy, could you please tell the crowd who Keolis is?
Keolis is the one that runs the commuter rail. It's the company that runs the commuter rail.
And so is that 53% increase a helpful kind of data point for conversations this year?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think those numbers came from Keolis. Yeah, so they're aware of that, but of course we're going to talk about that once we start that conversation.
Thank you.
Yep.
Counselor, is that it? Okay, we're going to open up to questions and comments from the Committee of the Whole now, and I saw Councilor Cohen's hand was first, actually, when Councilor Davis was still on slated to speak, so we've got a backlog here. It's going to go Cohen, Stott, Merkel. Thank you.
I thought that Councilor Merkel had raised her hand in the beginning, so I'll defer. Yeah, because I have a question for someone who left briefly.
Okay, we're going to skip it. We're going to start with Councilor Merkel. Take it away.
Yes, thank you, Chair Watson-Felt, not being a member of the committee. This is for our police chief. And I also want to say thank you for all the effort in the fire department and every department, on public safety, the due diligence that's done on every aspect, and the fluid situation of public safety in this country, and just all the discussions we've had in all of that. And I wanted to particularly comment, I appreciated your comment on the services of the state police, which is interesting. They assist us for free. Being uncomfortable with them patrolling, and that it's best if they're handling other duties. I agree with that. Just because they don't know our neighborhoods, they don't know our vibe, and we want residents to feel comfortable, and so I did appreciate that. And I had two questions. One was the additional law enforcement options that you have. Do you find it's enough, it's readily available to meet the extra needs that you have? And I also appreciated the partnerships of the trade-off. I think that's all, it's really the North Shore working together. But yeah, I was curious as how you feel that do you have to is it a concern? It's like, I'm going to need this much extra, are they going to be available to me? And also, interesting, when I moved here 14 years ago now, and I'm right downtown, the first thing on my radar was emergency vehicles getting through, and I've definitely seen, less congestion downtown, in connecting the dots that we've gone over tonight. Did more transportation options result in the fewer parking violations? happens? And is that resulting in easier access for emergency vehicles? Because my own observation was there was less congestion. It's gotten, aside from COVID being an unusual situation, the last couple of years it seems less congested, and I definitely have seen more of the small fire UTV carts around the downtown as well. I have noticed them more. But yeah, just curious if that's your take on it as well, that it does seem less tight, which is helpful for emergency vehicles.
So first of all, thank you for your comments. I think that each year our plan gets a little bit better, and so our deployment of officers from night to night and from street corner to street corner gets a little bit better every year. And I think, as a police chief, I always want more police officers, but I do feel that on those critical nights, on those very busy nights in October, yes, we do have enough officers to handle the crowds and to promote public safety. Obviously, I talk about the things that keep me up at night range from just a regular car accident, but one where pedestrians are involved, to things that blend into the realm of terrorism. And then, of course, there's no way you can have enough police officers to handle something like that. But, I think it's to the great credit of the planners in the police department, Captain Lasalfo and Lieutenant Lubis, who, as described before, begin planning on November 1st for the next year's haunted happenings, where the plan gets better, is very good, and one only need listen to the radio during those critical nights to see how quickly the calls are handled. So I think we are well policed on those nights. In terms of the overall congestion, I think it has gotten better. I think the residential parking it bears witness. Just the increased ridership and despite the increased crowds is proof of that. And to get back to Councilor Davis's question about how we affect that, I think it's a constant reminding the media anytime there's an opportunity to speak to the press in the months leading up to October. I know the mayor and I try to repeat, please take public transportation, and people don't always listen to me, but they do in this case, and it is very. I think it does improve things in a variety of ways, but emergency vehicle response is one of them.
Yeah, one more comment to follow up that. I think the city really has done a good job pushing out that information in general. Please take the train and alternate transportation and information about the shuttles. I think that is really getting out there, and I think it's made a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Stott.
Thank you, Chair. Not being a member of the committee, apologies for having you all get back up and down. My questions would be for Ms. Hodge at the Traffic Department, Transportation Department. Regarding the shuttle lot, I did hear that there would be, do you know about the fee? Actually, this might be for the mayor. You mentioned a fee next year possibly for that. I was wondering if there was more information provided for that, and if that would, if you think that might decrease the ridership on the shuttle, how kind of the balance of that is being discussed.
Yeah, so those details are definitely still being worked out. Every year we go into an agreement with the lots. So we go into an agreement with SSU to be able to use their lot. So there's conversations that are had at that level. There's also the conversation about staffing and the exchanging of money that has been happening. And there is a tipping point with any transportation network, as everyone can see, with buses, trains, even the Salem Skipper, where sometimes adding a fee that might be too high may deter people from using a service. So you want to be careful with that model. So that's definitely something we're taking into account with that as well. Anything you'd like to add? Okay.
I will note that this came up during the school budget conversation, one of the forums that they had of, creative solutions to their budget that they were looking at, and it came up as a public comment that our parking lots for essentially our students and employees are being used by the tourists and residents or tourists coming to the city, which I understand the purpose of that, and I do think it is a need and fulfills, but to have nothing go back to the schools, so perhaps when you're looking at staffing, that could be a creative solution. The volunteer groups within the schools are a giant force that can be reckoned with, and also they're very familiar with the process and the situation in the parking lot. There were also comments about trash left behind by those visiting. So it's definitely, I think, something to think about when we're, having those conversations to continue along that. Thank you. So I did have a quick question about just the data that you said, the non-resident parking tickets, that number that was provided, is that like metered spots? Is that what that means?
Lieutenant Tucker, I'm looking at you.
So the tickets issued is broken down between resident parking tickets and then total tickets non-resident parking?
I'd have to see the slide, but
I just didn't know what that meant. Is it must be like metered or something? I'm not. It's because it's 3,000. It's pretty high.
That may be. Let me see. I think the way it's phrased, the way I would take it is the top row would be resident parking violations, and then non-resident parking, not meaning non-residents. That would be like meters and things like that.
Meters.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty high.
That's always
For the fact that our meter revenue went down, but the ticket, so maybe they just weren't paying the meters. Interesting. Question along the violation and the tickets, specifically for resident parking. Do you have any, and this might just be feeling, but how are those ticketed? Like, is it calling in, or are you receiving calls to come patrol certain streets? Like, we can see which streets have the higher number of tickets and which do not. And I'm wondering if it's because of active patrols that are happening or because of calls and proactive review. Tucker's right there.
He's lurking in the back. Well, it does mostly stem from our enforcement routes. There are the occasional, or I guess it's more frequent calls during October months for certain streets to be checked out. There were questions about whether or not someone had a permit this year because you couldn't physically see it. Often cases, they were a legit parking or a legit vehicle parked in a resident space. We can only move around the city so much when it becomes congested, but for the enforcement routes, at least on the outskirts, with the license plate reader technology, they're able to do their rounds a bit more quickly since they're not on foot. There was a little bit of an adjustment period that happened before October hit, so it was a little bit well-oiled at that point. And I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, it's a mixture of both. It's mostly proactive enforcement, even on the civilian meter enforcement staff. They added some staff this year. They were able to cover more areas. And then when we come online at our given time, they can focus more on meters and things like that. So the parking department will get sometimes they'll get the complaint, the telephone complaint, and sometimes we'll get it, and we'll respond to those. We have, we'll maintain a list. We break up into areas just so we don't have to crisscross the downtown, and we just try to proactively hit each street multiple times during the night and respond to the complaints.
Great. Thank you. I think that's all I have for the questions on the ticket, and I think we actually have an order in front of us to discuss the new parking system, so I will not get into that too much. I will just more make a comment, also, kind of repeat what my colleagues have said about the MBTA usage being up. Walking home every day, saw that, and I think it's not just the usage too, but just seeing the lines of the people queuing up to get into the train went down the entire entranceway. It was impressive. And I hope that along with the ridership, just the data of that, because the longer people are going to wait for those trains, and those lines might also be a discouragement from taking them. So hopefully the MBTA can see that and continue to increase the number of trains. I mean, we could have had back-to-back-to-back trains there, definitely. Thank you. And the pleasure of going after the committee is most of my questions have been answered, so thank you. I will make one final comment about the drones. The past couple of years, I have sent lovely photos the day after Halloween of Furlong Park just entirely littered with the little rocket shells from the fireworks. So I definitely am a proponent of a drone, understanding and respecting that the sound of fireworks is also something that's helpful, but I'm really hoping we can find a middle ground. Also with the dry season, just fireworks and fire in general so close to the park and homes always makes me nervous as well. But I am a +1 for drone show.
Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Watson-Felt. I echo comments about the great work of all the city staff, and as Councilor Marcillo said, it blows me away how clean the downtown is the day after Halloween. It's amazing. Two things to Councilor Jerslow. As you can imagine, I'd love all our lighting to be solar, but if you have a couple of cloudy or rainy days, or late at night, they're not going to be as effective. And it's really hard to keep them going. We have one of those speed, identification on Lafayette Street, and if we have a couple of days where it's not sunny, it just like stops or doesn't work. Can I summon Lieutenant Tucker back to the podium? MVP. Just a quick question, if you have any, even if it's anecdotal, like an idea about near the Hocus Pocus place, if the violations have decreased, have you seen more or less action? For people who don't know, up until a couple of years ago, we had the barricades that said resident parking only. That didn't work at all, obviously. And then smart enough to say road closed, which to me, if I was in Worcester or someplace and it said road closed, I think, there's a gas leak or they're paving or something. And you and I have talked about this, how many times I've just been on Ocean or whatever and seen 8 cars in a row with, out-of-state plates. So do you have a kind of a sense of, are things getting better since you're enforcing it more?
I got a feeling, anecdotally, I could go back and look at, we track as far as police activity, and then we could also do this with the city too, with the civilian staff. We track how many tickets are written on each day on each street that we hit, and I could provide that to you later. I don't have year-to-year comparison of that. It felt decent this year, and as you know, we put the barriers up. Maybe we can put up a really scary sign to keep, but people will do what they want to do. And we found that we're really trying to encourage them to park out on Lafayette Street, which is more or less unrestricted. So it felt like it was similar, maybe. I like to think it was a little bit better than 2023. Still plenty of crowds down there. We try to maintain a presence in that area. The problem with locking the street down too severely is the residents wouldn't be able to flow in and out. So it's kind of a balance of it is a public street, so we just try to discourage them as much as possible.
And Ashley, please don't let people know that the new movie is coming out. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair, not being a member of the committee. I guess this question would be for either Jeremy or the mayor. In regards to what Councilor Hapworth was talking about as far as the vendors down on the commons, I remember years ago, they were spread out throughout the whole downtown area, and it wasn't just Fiesta shows. Have we thought about allowing other vendors to come in and spread them out a little bit so that Because I got to be honest with you, the vendors we have right down there now, it's getting old. It's the same thing every year. I would like to see a more diverse vendor participation, whether it be even our local businesses that, you know, might want to put a booth out or something like that, not just necessarily in front of their store or their business, but somewhere else within the downtown area.
Yeah, thank you. And to add to what Councilor Hapworth had said earlier, one of the other things is we put it out for RFP for bid, these things, and we just re-upped, and Fiesta did get the RFP again for the Common, so technically they are under contract to put a certain amount of trucks on the Common. But what we did do with the RFP with that in mind is the previous 3 years, they had been the sole distributor of all, I think it's the B5 district downtown, so nobody else could have food trucks. And we've taken that off now and basically just put the Common and a few places on for those carts on the Essex Mall. So that places like, you know, Derby Square that Creative Collective will now have, and basically anywhere else around town, if we figure out a way to do different food trucks, locals, over at Charlotte Fortin, we can now put whatever food, you know, that either the city wants or Anthem wants to do. So that was the idea of taking them off as the sole provider for all of downtown, so we can utilize that.
And that being said, is there any type of advertisement, or are we getting the word out there that we have that capability for other vendors to come in? You know, I don't even know what permit fees would be, or, you know, how that's handled through the Board of Health and all that, but I mean, I hear a lot of people talking about vendors we have downtown, and like I said, they talk about it's the same thing every year. So trying to get some other people in, I think, would be a good thing.
Yeah, and to add to that, like, I've had conversations with Fiesta about changing stuff up and bringing other food trucks in and local food trucks into their RFP, which they did a little bit last year, and hopefully they will again this year. Creative Collective and Anthem and other groups are aware of that, so hopefully they'll bring some others in. We've had a little discussion about food trucks around the city and how we could do that, but that's still a work in progress. But we're allowing those other entities to be able to do that now, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I think that's everyone on, Councilor Merkel, and then it's my turn.
Thank you, Chair Watson-Feld. Not being a member of the committee, and super quick, I also want to cast my vote in favor for the drone show. Thank you.
Okay.
Jeremy, I have a couple of questions specifically on Fiesta, since we are on them right now. How long is this new contract for?
3 years.
So it's another 3 years.
Yep.
How long has Fiesta been our primary contract holder on the Common?
I don't know the exact number of years off the top of my head, before my time.
Okay. I'm very excited to hear that you have removed that portion around their control of the B5. I think it's a huge problem historically, so I'm really excited to see what other opportunities are opened up now for other local vendors. Has Fiesta shows ever been charged for the damage caused to the Common from their trucks?
Not like specifically for any, like they pay a common fee and they pay into the Parks and Rec and they pay for repair, but not like, hey, like for example, you brought up Food Truck Festival when that truck knocked over a portion of the fence. That was dealt with individually, but I don't think they've been charged.
I'm specifically talking about Fiesta.
Right. I mean, they pay into the Common Fund and they pay for repairs on the Common.
So when you say they pay for repairs on the Common, is there a process after haunted happenings every year when the trucks and vehicles are removed, that there is an assessment done of their specific allotted space and then a charge to them for damage done to that specific allotted space after the end of the contract year?
I will allow Ray to talk about that.
Thanks. Hi, Ray.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Short answer to that, yes. We do a pre-inspection of the common at the beginning, watch loading, making sure that everybody uses the outside of the carts, make sure that the setups are done in a way that we could. And especially afterwards, we do go over, we make notes, and then we add them to our vendor that we go out to bid to have the common restored. We review those notes with them.
And then you charge that back to Fiesta, whatever those charges are, to repair?
We submit fees to the Common Replacement Fund or the Maintenance Fund, and we draw those funds out of those for that purpose.
So Fiesta is not being directly charged for damage they are directly causing to the common that we are then paying out of pocket for?
Fiesta Shows is charged and makes a deposit into the Common Maintenance Fund, which we utilize for that purpose.
Okay. And do you think that that's a fair and balanced number of investment versus the cost of repairs after haunted happenings is over?
That is a great question. I don't have that information for you because I'm not in charge of those funds.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm going to look to the mayor for that. I would like to have an understanding from Anna on what's going into that maintenance fund from our vendors and then what's coming out, and specifically around Fiesta Trucks' usage of their delegated space. Thank you. I have a couple other questions. I'm also a pro vote for the drone. Big time. I love that. Let's do the drone show. Can't wait. A request to the mayor and all department heads who prepare presentations for our council and for the public. There are a series of color and design best practices for colorblind accessibility, and I'm requesting that whether it's a program through Rahina's department or it's something you all want to do on your own through the mayor's office, that you look into those best practices in design and make sure that anything that's being presented to the public and to this council is colorblind accessible. Thank you. In February, when we received the letter, Mayor, I may not remember if you had included at that time a breakdown of the expenses. I feel like in past years we had a better sense of what the cost of the porta potties was, what the cost of public safety was. I know that you raised this year, as is always the case, right, that overtime and public safety are our largest, like, you know, humans are always our largest cost on almost any budget line. But without the breakdown, I'd just be curious to see from a percentage perspective what we're really talking about. Do you have that by any chance?
Yeah, so I'll direct you to page 3 of the letter. Public safety overtime and expenses increased by 2.9%. Public works overtime and expenses increased by 5.6%. Portable restrooms, as I mentioned, decreased by 26.4%, and shuttle buses, because of the reduced days, decreased by 20.8%. Bands and fireworks decreased by 0.7%. Costs associated with Pioneer Village in the Witch House increased by 25%. Health Department inspections costs increased by 16.2%, and then miscellaneous costs decreased by 33.2%. And then the next page is the, so that's a total decrease of 2.5, yeah. And the next page is the revenues, which
Thank you for that reminder. I was thinking I was crazy. I know in the past it's been in our report, so that's helpful. Okay, with that, let me just go over my notes real quick, make sure I'm ready to open to the public. Oh, yeah, Councilor Marcillo, while I'm looking over.
Thank you. I just have a couple observations that I should have included, and one is that Derby Street tends to get crowded, more crowded than I'm comfortable with before it gets closed down. And I think it's because people are waiting in line at restaurants, and so the sidewalks are blocked and people are in the street. And I witnessed something last year that, like, I was really terrified by a car coming down the road with so many people in the middle of the road, and really the road should have been closed. And I know you're going to do, you know, more of that this year, and I know Derby Street is an important street, but like there were just way too many people on the street.
You know, I think that comes back to that play I was talking about, where we want to wait as long as we can, you know, that moment, that sort of moment of critical mass, we need to be on guard for, to close down the street, unless we do it by schedule, which leads to possibly an empty, closed street. But what I can tell you, as you alluded to, is we're going to close it earlier this year for those exact safety reasons that you're talking about.
Yeah, it really did seem to be like people just blocking the sidewalks in front of restaurants, and so I don't know I don't know how we can manage that, but that was pretty clear last year. And then the other thing was, when I was walking down there, I came up on Essex Street, and I was spending some time with one of your officers while he was checking out license plates so that I could see how he was doing that. And one of the tour bus drivers came up and was very irate because he couldn't get his bus into where he needed to pick up his passengers. We need to work on that. I don't know what the tour bus ordinance is or whatever, but we need to keep the buses out of the downtown, drop off at a certain location, pick up at a certain location, and we need to get that word out. So I'm looking at Ashley, I'm looking at the city, like, we need to keep them out and know that they're not going to get in.
I don't disagree, and I think that, last year the tour buses were a greater issue than they've been previous years, as I think a number of the councilors have brought up. So yes, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Chief, while I have you, actually, and this is a question for you from a public safety perspective, but also Christina from a traffic management process perspective, but has there ever been any conversation around designating Uber and Lyft drop-off locations, pick-up and drop-off locations? They do that in the French Quarter, and it means that, you have to walk a couple blocks to get there, but it is always the same few locations in town, and it really avoids that sort of standing, stopping, interruption of traffic.
Informally, we do, but it could be made more official.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love to see a program where, since we're talking about tour guide, not tour guides, not yet, tour bus drop off and pick up, it would be great to also manage that. Specifically, Councilor Jerslow has probably heard it a number of times on Charter Street, where there's that whole stretch of no parking either side, and that is like a hotbed for Uber and Lyft stop and goes, which backs up traffic when that street is open. So I would love to see a program like that. Has there ever been any conversation around no standing signs, like temporary ones, the way we have resident-only parking zones, or just because I think it's a similar kind of conversation. People are just pulling over wherever they see fit. Yeah. Has that ever come up in conversation, you think, around flow through the downtown?
Not that I'm aware of. I'd have to look into how we implement that on a temporary basis, since those are... if we wanted to have the force of law, presumably we would have to have an ordinance behind it.
Yeah, okay. Something to consider, I think. Another question, and I think I know the answer to this question, but it's always worth asking. We talk a lot about, the management of tour guide bodies and, those whole groups of folks and everything. But I think, Councilor Marcillo also made a really good point around just the blocking of sidewalks, period, when we get really congested. Are your sort of beat cops, I don't know what else to call them, but those out in the street walking the streets, are they also fully informed on all of what Sergeant Ball's team is and can enforce based on what they see if they happen to be standing there?
So they are fully informed, and Sergeant Ball sends out regular bulletins about that sort of thing, but that's not as effective as having a dedicated group.
Absolutely.
For that. And this year we added an additional officer, Pat McMiniman, who was, I think, an unqualified success. So we're certainly going to repeat that and maybe add an additional officer to that specifically for reasons like that.
I love that. Thank you so much. This next question is for Christina. And it's a quick one. You could probably just yes or no from where you are. Were your numbers inclusive of the PD's traffic enforcement numbers? Because I know Chief, he reported out the PD specific, and it made me wonder if they were also rolled up into Christina's or if they were additive.
I'm fairly certain that they are inclusive because all of our parking tickets are processed by the parking department after we issue them, so I believe that reflects the total effort.
Okay. And then, Christina, based on the sort of foot traffic you saw this year around the new online registration system and the questions that were raised, I know we saw in your data that the numbers had dropped for resident-only parking registrations this year. Do you think you might see them increase next year now that everyone understands that there's a new digital system? I feel like in that transition year might have been, that data may be a little wonky. What's your instinct?
Yeah, it's tough to say. Just going from one system to another, there's always some gaps in data that you can't necessarily account for. But the way that the old system worked is people would receive mailings that maybe they didn't even live there anymore, and we would get a lot of return to senders. So it made it more of a, you receive a permit when you request it or go through the process of doing it, not just you're handed something with hopes that you still live there.
Right.
So it's tough to say, even out of the permits that were distributed last year or in 2023 under the old system, how many were actually used and utilized. So it would be interesting to see the numbers this coming October compared to 2024, just to see if there is a huge spike or if it's relatively level.
Great, thank you so much. That concludes my questions. We're going to open it to the public. So if anyone in-house, and I also have my online attendees, so if anyone in the room would like to comment tonight or ask any questions, we're going to go left to right in order around, so that seems to work really well when I've seen other chairs do that. So please just feel free to stand up and come to the podium. A couple of notes around public comment. This is a committee meeting, right? So there's no like specific limit on it, but we do always ask that, you know, the topic tonight is haunted happenings reporting, so that's our topic. This is not a question and answer period. It's not like a dialogue, so we will try and get any questions that you ask and raise tonight. We'll try and get them answered. I'll be keeping track, and so will our department heads and stakeholders here. But just wanted to caveat that this public comment period is sometimes it can be difficult to make sure we're catching everything. But if we don't, you know, always feel free to email citycounselors@salem.com. That goes to all 11 of us, and we can make sure department heads will get back to you. We'll get the data. Anyone in the house like to make a comment or ask a question tonight? Yeah, is just anyone on the left side of the room? Okay, yep, come on right up. We're going to go left to right. We'll get to you, I promise.
Yeah, my name is Rich Hamill. I live at 31 Washington Square. Regarding the porta potties that are on the common, I understand the need for them, but they're always in front of my house. Every time, and actually not just during haunted happenings. Whenever there's an event on the common, all the porta potties get put right across the street from my house. It's a big park. Is there a reason why they can't be moved around? Or there's even areas of the common that aren't in front of anybody's house, like where the arch is, you know, where Winter Street intersects. You know, maybe they could put them there, but it's, you know, I don't care that they're in front of my house sometimes, but they're always in front of my house. And the other thing I want to bring up was the damage that's done during the Fiesta shows. And there's 2 sections of the fence that were damaged this past year. I don't know if it was from that, but I don't feel confident they're ever going to get repaired. You know, they're new sections. A lot of time and effort was put into replacing those, and you know, now they're broken again. And sure, you know, Fiesta shows might get billed for it, but why isn't the work getting done? Yeah, and one other thing. I heard from some of my neighbors that people were being fined this year for renting out parking spaces on their private property. I'm just curious what the motivation was behind that. I have 2 spaces. I don't rent them out. It's not worth my time or trouble, but it just seems kind of petty that people were being penalized for, you know, especially when they're inconvenienced for the whole month just to make a few extra dollars. So that's all I wanted to bring up.
I can actually answer your last question.
Okay, sure.
So technically the use of private property for making like money for commercial uses is not legal. We did pass a few years ago an ordinance that is a sort of a zoning overlay that allows for business properties that have off-street parking to rent their lots for the commercial use of public parking, which is different than the use that's allowed through their business license. that at the time did not extend to residents. So it was still and has always been illegal for residents to rent out their private property for that commercial purpose. There is a matter before this council now requesting that this council can consider extending that right to residents with, you know, all the same expected requirements and surcharge fees that exist in the ordinance for the commercial payers, right? The businesses that are registered to do that. So if you have it sounds like you're maybe are in support of that measure, I would encourage you to feel free to send an email to city councilors at salem.com and let us know that you're in support of that if you are. All of that material can be found online. I can also share it with you as your city councilor if you want to just ping me, and I can get you that, okay?
And your name is?
Is Caroline Watson-Felt. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Again, I don't plan to take advantage of it, but you know, if it's not disruptive in any way, I don't understand why it's a problem.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you. All right, we're going to keep moving, and then we're going to try and get answers to those first 2 points. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamill. Next. All right, come on up. And you do not have to state your name and address, but it is always really helpful if you're willing to share it.
Hi, I'm Victor Oliveira, and also live at 31 Washington Square, so guess who I came with today? I wanted to talk more about that section of Fiesta that they're occupying on the Common, and if it's possible to, after haunted happenings, to have an independent assessment of the total impact of the Common and how much it would cost to repair it. Because I think that cost is really important to know. In all these metrics, long-term, the long-term environmental impact of those activities on the Common, I mean, we're talking year to year now. We're talking about things that happen immediately, but what about, again, the trees 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line? And I think an independent assessment would be really helpful to know.
Thank you. Next. I'm looking at the left side of the room. I'm seeing a lot of public servants. All right, great. Right side of the room. Yeah, come on up.
My name is Lois Ferraresso. I live at 315 Essex Street, right across the street from the Ropes Mansion. And there's been a lot of work that has been done over the years, and it's happening right now, to try to make it safe, because there is a phenomenal amount of people who come Hocus Pocus. And so my question is, anyway, and a lot of the stuff that's been happening that they've been working on, I understand that they're trying so hard to make sure it's going to be safe with the amount of people that come through there. So I'm aware of that. I'm not sure I love it all, but I'm aware of it. My question is, has anybody given any consideration to putting limits of the size, the number of people that a tour guide has? When I first moved here, tour guides had about 25 people max in a group. Now, the groups are somewhere in the range, they're never the same, 60 plus people. And those tour groups they all show up at one time, okay? They come to wherever they're going that they're interested in. So has anyone given any consideration to limiting the number of tour guides, the number of people a tour guide can have when they're bringing everyone around, particularly in areas where there are lots of tour guides at the Ropes Mansion?
Thank you. Are there other questions you'd like to add before we move on? And then we'll...
No, that's my only question.
Thank you. Who else from the right-hand side of the room? Any other comments or questions from anyone? Okay, great. So, let's work backwards. With regards to the tour guide maximum number of people. Ms. Ferretzmo, yes, there is a limit in October. I'm going to ask the chief to come up and talk more about the limit of the numbers within tour groups that is allowed and how he communicates with tour guides in October specifically about that limit. And also a public service request, my friend, if you are seeing tour guides of 60 or more, please call the police.
So we limit it to 40? Oh, I'm sorry.
Get right on that microphone, please, Chief.
Still scared of spiders. We limit it to 40, and then as I mentioned, we wound up citing a lot more mostly because Officer McMenamin was included in that as a secondary licensing officer. Sometimes they appear much, much larger than they are where there's other crowds on the street. Sometimes it's difficult to differentiate, but it's an ongoing battle, if you will.
Yeah, it is an ongoing conversation. Just to let you know, as the Ward 2 counselor, I've been in a number of these conversations for a number since I became elected. Actually, even before, around how in some instances on some of our sidewalks, even a body of 26 people is a full blockage, right? And that can often look like a lot, especially on streets like Charter Street or Central Street, or I'm thinking over here in St. Peter's and Church Street. So it is an ongoing conversation. Chief, is that 40 a year-round maximum?
Did we limit it?
At one time, 40 was only a seasonal limitation.
40 is year-round. We had discussed making it smaller during Halloween, but I think that was not done.
Okay. I'm sorry? Yeah, we documented in the permit, and also just for anyone out there who's interested, Muni Code is a wonderful online resource. So if you are a big nerd like I am, I would encourage you to go to Muni Code and look up the Salem ordinances, and also our zoning ordinances are there as well. And you can search for keywords like tour groups, amplification, things like that, and you'll find our actual laws right there for your reference as well, in case you're also curious. Thanks, Chief. Let's move back over to the Common and see if we can't get some more information around the location of porta potties. Ray, I'm looking at you, my friend. How are the location of porta potties determined, specifically on the Common?
So basically, we wanted to spread them out on each side because we got a ton of people, but also the lighting on the Common determines a lot of where the porta potties are going. We don't want to put them towards the middle because that's where we have everything happening, so we kind of put them out on the sides, but we don't want to go too far back, like towards the arch or towards the back side, because it gets really dark over there. And where they are, it can be adjusted. Like we can pull them down now that I've seen it for a year and where everyone goes and stuff. We can pull them down a little bit. But really it's dependent on where the markets are, where the people are, and the lighting, especially at night.
Okay, so you heard from our neighbors tonight, maybe.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, great. We have a conversation happening around the fence. I'm looking at you again, Ray. There has been substantive damage to the fence year over year over year over year to varying degrees, but especially this last year, right, with some really visible, noticeable damage. So can you speak to what the process is for how we find the money to fix that, how long it takes, all of that, please?
Yep. So with we had about 6 sections of fence that were damaged this year by 2 different entities. We're still working right now with the manufacturer, the installer, to get accurate pricing. That's kind of been difficult. It's quite expensive, and we're still kind of working through that process. We're also working with the 3 sections of fence that were damaged by a vendor. We're still working through their insurance company right now on that.
Thank you. And so theoretically, the cost to replace and repair would be covered.
The cost that was damaged by the vendor will be borne by their insurance company.
Thank you. While we have you, has there ever been an independent assessment of the state of the common and what it would take to, fully, I know there have been various assessments of the common, but specifically with regards to the state of the ground, the lawn, the tree plantings, all of that, and if there is a way to determine damage compounded year over year and what we should be thinking about doing about that.
That's a fantastic point. So for the past 4 or 5 years, we've actually implemented maintenance of the common on aeration of the whole entire common, overseeding, fertilization, all to try to decompact the whole length of the common. We've also worked this year, like we mentioned with Jeremy, on relocating different vendors to different parts of the common to minimize wear, locating porta potties on different sections, even though maybe it sounds like it's the same ones year to year to year, there is some movement of them. I think we're also in conversations with looking at renovations or development of the front section of the common where Fiesta kind of looks like. So we are in conceptual conversations on that, on what that's going to look like, how that's going to look like, and what should we do moving forward.
Great, thank you. Is there any other comment in the room before I ask everybody on Zoom? Anyone who's not gone? Oh, Mr. Hamill would like to go again. Ooh, this is not something we usually do, Mr. Hamill, but this is a small crowd tonight. I'll allow it. It's my first meeting. I'm feeling generous. You were so patient. And then I'm going to open it up to Zoom.
Yeah, I forgot to bring this up. The field of orange lights. I actually like them, but they replaced the bulbs and they're super bright this year. It's actually kind of obnoxious, and they have them on during the day, and which I don't mind, but they're so bright you can even see them in broad daylight. If they could do something maybe to dim them or put lower wattage bulbs in there.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good point. And our city electrician is not here. Do you want to speak to this one, Ray? I know this came up a number of times last year. The timing around when they're supposed to go on, when they're supposed to go off, how late they're supposed to be on, they're a draw, they're not a draw, like it's a whole thing. Yep. So can you speak to the orange lights, please? So
I can speak to the orange lights. So we ended up replacing the bulbs, and unfortunately the manufacturer, they do have a higher luminescent so unfortunately, lighting is always a concern. We want to try to promote, more lighting, more visual. Timing has always been an issue for the common. Power outages, timing, etc. I think we could try to improve on that, and we'll definitely try to pay more attention to the timers, especially for the daytime.
I have a number of questions, actually, since I have you around, not just the orange lights, but all the lights on the common, the tree lights specifically. Yeah. Have we ever looked to any kind of solar light program for that, where we can, I don't know if that's a potential investment we want to consider making, or are they all...
Is this about the holiday lights that are on the trees or on the common?
I'm talking about, yeah, anything that's going to hang and be there and go on and off. I'm just wondering from a power management perspective if there's a desire to look into having a solar source for those.
I think we're always open to have that discussion. Let's connect.
All right, I would love that, thank you. All right, good, we're gonna move on to Zoom. There are 3 online attendees. If anyone in Zoom land would like to ask a question or have a comment tonight based on this report to the council, please raise your hand. All right, nobody. With that, Councillor Hapworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion. First, I want to thank everyone who showed up tonight. I appreciate everyone coming out here and sharing that information with us. I want to make a motion to receive and file.
Councillor Hapworth makes a motion to receive and file. All those in favor? Or do we have to second it? Second it from Councillor Masillo. All those in favor? Thank you. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands plus my own. Councillor Hapworth.
Motion to adjourn so I can get my daughter's giant pink suit.
Yeah, Sylvia.
We want to return anything? No.
No, as I understand it procedurally, we'll close this meeting and the matter will be closed. We are not motioning. There's no motion on the table to remain in committee? Okay, then we're going to move on. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Thanks, everyone.